One thing that I got from like your work was this thing about having a conversation with your boss, and actually your boss doesn't want to have a bad conversation, and most of them are humans who go home and you know, if you put something to them, they're not gonna like slap you down necessarily. They probably will hear you out.
Yeah.
But can we talk about that conversation? Because we've talked about the goal and that. I want to talk about, you know, how do you get them in the room, and then what do you say to them when they're in the room?
Yeah. Well, let's assume that you've had this 6-month run up. You've done some prep. You've worked out where you are versus the market. You've looked at what skill set you've got and what adds value. You've identified a few areas where, and it's kind of like selling a company, right? The idea is you don't want to be able to demonstrate all the value because for the potential buyer, there's no more upside. So you want to demonstrate there's some trajectory of growth there. So you've identified a few things as like, you know, teasers or carrots where you can move this forward and the manager and the team benefits. I think the key then is finding like an environment that works for everyone. So you might feel quite intimidated and it could be a certain boardroom you get asked to go to. Don't go to that place. Try and find a cafe or somewhere that you feel comfortable. And as they often say, there's a saying it says, no strategy survives first contact with the enemy, right?
Right.
And often what you can do is, you can plan out a whole series of how conversation is going to go. You sit down and then you're sitting with your line manager who says, I was up all night because Charles really sick.
Everyone's got a plan to get punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
That's what Tyson said.
That's
same
right.
thing,
yeah.
same thing.
But it's like that. Yeah. And then like the conversation just goes left and you're like, oh man, this is ruined.
This wasn't part of my plan.
This wasn't part of my plan. So you should expect it's never going to go the way you expect, I think is the main thing. And then you have a few scenarios. I think, and then the key is you're trying to essentially, like selling any product or service, you're essentially selling a vision, right? You're selling something that in a way should have a benefit to this individual. My first ever boss when I worked for Deloitte, or Arthur Andersen as it was, said to me, he said, it's important that you don't understand your boss's objectives, understand your boss's objectives. And he was very clear. He said, look, if you help me to win, you win.
Yeah.
I thought, what a great piece of advice early on. I was like 22, 23.
Make your boss look good. That's what I always used to say to the new starters.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, that's our sales manager. Make him look good. If he steals one of your sales or claims a victory, don't worry about it because he'll remember that you gave him that credit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, really is.
Yeah.
So I think finding a way to initiate and articulate whatever that vision looks like in a way that excites the person you're trying to get on board with it, which is in most cases going to be your supervisor or your line manager. It might be something where, you might recognize that, let's say I worked in a factory, let's make it like, accessible for many people. And it looks like, my line manager or my supervisor's got a difficult fractious relationship with that guy over there and we have to work together. So one of the things that I could, talk about is how I'm going to make the relationship between our teams better. That would make their life, his or her life, so much more enriched.
I'll take that drama away from you.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's like a burden off of them. It makes their life easier. And as we've often learned, human beings are pretty straightforward. If we can decrease the pain and increase the pleasure, both things have a similar effect. So again, and it's a great phraseology, can I take something off of their back, which makes their load a bit lighter? And another thing is, you've got to be, I think, aware of maybe what you're dealing with, in the sense that every individual's got a story. And it might be, and often an ambitious individual in the team for certain managers and certain leaders can be a challenge for them. Because what it does is it, in a way, throws up and puts in front of their face the fact that they may not have succeeded as much as they wanted to.
Yeah.
And you've got certain managers who would do nothing more than help you to succeed and see you, want to see you win because they genuinely want you to be totally fulfilled. Other managers who don't want you to win at all. Because
how do you deal with that?
I think the key is understanding their story as much as possible, right? And you're not always going to solve it. That's not realistic. But as we went through lockdown, I got a bit emotional one day because I was looking through like LinkedIn posts and everyone's talking about challenges and whatnot. So I said, right, I'm going to do an open public thing where if any random member that I'm connected to wants to talk about their life story and their challenges, I'll do it. And for about an hour, I try and listen to their life story.
Wow.
Right. The fascinating thing when you do this exercise is as you watch people telling you their life story, they start to solve their own stuff.
Yeah.
And then often they start to realize why they do the things that they do and they start to identify things that hold them back. So that's with a stranger. If you do this with someone that you actually know, it's so powerful because even with someone who's a manager or a boss, you start to realize, I get it. That's why you don't like to go to those meetings. That's why you react that way when someone says that. That's why you would only attend this thing or do things in a certain way. That's why you manage projects that way. It helps you to understand them in a way. And often what you're doing when you're trying to, the best idea is you're trying to sell a vision to someone who you actually understand. It could be, and I think sounds sexist, but I think this is actually worse with men. And when I've done this exercise in companies, it tends to be men are worse at this, where they have known and worked with each other for 20 years, but never knew each other.
Is it true that women are less likely to ask for a pay rise than men?
I mean, I don't know what the data says on that, but I think anecdotally, from what I would suggest, I think women would definitely tend to be more, I don't know what the word is for it. They would work smarter and harder. They would go the extra mile, whereas some men probably wouldn't as much as women would do. So I think, and so that's one challenge. And often they can downplay their own skills and experiences. So I think, like the imposter syndrome thing, that I've come across when I talk to lots of different people at work, it's prevalent in both sexes, of course, but I think with women can be even worse, which is totally unfounded. They've got, in many cases, much more experience, much more adept at doing the job, but often feel like they can't ask for what they want to ask for all sorts of reasons. And that can be also women, that can also be people, with disabilities, that can be ethnic groups. Like we feel like, there's a reason why I shouldn't ask for this.
We all doubt our abilities as well.
That's
don't
true.
We?
I'm a legend.
Yeah, this guy doesn't. This guy doesn't. Yeah. Okay, so you said go into the meeting and almost be prepared for a no. So, but you can still have a positive outcome out of that. Other things that people could, they want a 10% pay rise. They come out of there, they didn't get that. Is there still a win in that somewhere? How are you managing that situation?
Well, what you would probably do is go in with a few options of things that you might request. Right? So one thing might be, we would start with the star prize if we're going to win the game show, which is going to be 10, 11, 12, whatever the percentages that you're going to ask for. And that you may realize quite quickly in the conversation that actually that's either not possible, it's off the table for discussion, or it might be up for debate, and this is going to take some time. And that time, the discussion I had with my boss about this day a week wasn't immediate. It was kind of met with, okay, you need to develop a business plan and show me some data and some stats and some stuff, which felt uncomfortable. So I went away, put together some documentation on it, and it took 3 months to discuss. And during those 3 months, it's difficult as far as I was concerned, because we all now know this thing. It's like I've let something out the bag. And that really what I really want to do, even though I've been here for a while and doing a good job, you now understand that I want to grow my own company. Mm-hmm. It's like sort of in a weird way, sort of semi breaking up with someone, saying, "We're going to be together."
They found
for the next
out you've
few
been
months.
interviewing elsewhere or something.
It's kind of like that. It's difficult, isn't it? Yeah. So I think that's a really important thing to get into and make sure that you're like clear about that next step. Yeah,
and if they do say no, where do you go from there?
Well, so sorry. I think the first thing is to have like this number in mind, and then what you might have is some alternative ideas of things that they could that could benefit everyone. So that might be development opportunity. So it might be something that either as a paid course, something where you want to go and have some experience of doing something, or it might be something inside the organization. So I lecture at City University. I do like 5 or 6 lectures each year. I did one on Monday. And one of the things I say to the undergrads and to the master students is we talk about like the dream manager. And we describe the dream manager does 2 things, right? The dream manager is someone who understands who you are and genuinely wants to know who you are and help you to develop and grow yourself, and is able to help you understand the network and the matrix of the organization that you work in. Right. And there's red flags, right? So I would say to an undergrad, or, if you've just finished or, just graduated and you're going to go for that interview, if you get a sense that the manager you might be working for is, it's like 2 things. If you get a sense that they don't really care about you and your growth and development, and there's ways that you can ask those questions, that's a red flag. And the big red flag is how well networked are they in the organization? Because it might be that you're asking for growth and development opportunities, but unfortunately you've got like a dead end as a manager who doesn't really know many people. They could work for, an organization that employs 200,000 people. It doesn't mean much if they're not well networked. So I think, again, in the conversation, you've got the percentage and you've also got some requests of development, growth and opportunity for your own growth and development. And that could be internal. That might necessarily not cost any money, or it could be external, which could mean it needs some sort of business case to fund it. So, a request could be, I would like to spend half a day a week working with another team, or understanding how that those guys work over there, that helps add value to what we're doing here. I mean, it's not an unreasonable request.
No.
But again, it's sort of 10%, right? So it could be 10% of cash, could be 10% of your time to do something else with, which ultimately, if you're being really smart about it, you want to use that percentage of time to do something that's value adding to you, that makes you worth more.
Yeah.
Either here, or should I have to leave, makes me valuable elsewhere.
But frame it as a benefit to that manager at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you've only got the pay rise and they say no, you're like, oh shit, where do I go from here? But if you go, okay, well, that's a no. What about me working 10% of my time with this team? I think the manager's going to find it hard to say no again, aren't they?
That's right. And let's imagine the other way, right? Let's imagine this is a job that you don't particularly enjoy. And often what we found in our data is jobs that people don't enjoy, they tend to want more money for. There's a weird inverse relationship with it. Let's assume I really dislike this job, but actually I want 15% more to cope with the shit of being
Now I
here.
love it.
Well, now I don't, because I've got 50. Let's assume we have the debate and you say, right, okay, cool, 15% we're on. I now get paid 15% more for a job I don't like. And now your expectation of me as my manager goes up because you need more from me, more of the stuff I didn't like anyway. And how long does that 15% make an impact for? Month or two, couple max. You readjust, don't you? You buy better wine, go to a nicer restaurant,
upgrade the car.
That money's now normal, and therefore I'm still stuck. And actually, I'm asking for more, which is going to be impossible. So again, that's the reason why spending those 6 months would be a clever idea, because you might reinvestigate the idea that actually I don't want to be here at all. I don't want to do this job anymore. I want to do something different. I want to apply my skills elsewhere. So again, it gives you some breathing space. The worst thing you can do is a snap reaction to, I spoke to a mate of mine at the pub over the weekend, and it's Monday morning now, I'm demanding a pay rise, right?
Yeah.
Like, bad idea.
Yeah.